Yep. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Perceptive podcast here on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. I am Josh Placer, and we have another indie developer interview lined up tonight. My guest is currently working on the game World Turtles, and he is from Studio Recognition. And he is on to discuss the game as well as what he's been doing game dev wise. So please welcome to our chat tonight, Gideon. How are you doing?
Hi, thanks for the opportunity. I'm quite well, thank you. Working, of course, hard on World Turtles to get in as much as I can, and enjoying every minute of it.
It is great to have you on. Thanks for reaching out as I was making my request for more indie devs and games over the last few weeks. And for any developers watching, if you are interested in coming on to talk about your games or game dev, definitely reach out. My inbox is always open. But it is great to have you on. We certainly have some interesting things to discuss. So, as I always like to ask new guests when they come on, could you start off with talking a little bit about who you are and what is kind of your general background when it comes to game dev?
Okay, I actually joined the party quite late. I haven't been involved in game devs for more than 2 decades of doing an actual, let's call it a grown-up job. So when I was young, I always tinkered with computers and writing little apps and programs. And I think in those days they weren't called apps, but little programs. I used to try to make Turbo Pascal do some graphics. I had to go into a little bit of assembly language to try and get that to work, but it was always too slow and not enough memory and so on. So I used to play around with little programs like that, but that was very long ago. And then I went to university, got my degree, got married, had 4 kids. So all of that kind of, there was a dead end in that kind of playing around with coding or with games. And then when I was 40, one day I saw a Unity tutorial and I couldn't believe that this software was just available for anybody to play with, to tinker with and see what they could do. So I started just as a hobby, just learning it and watching videos and tutorials and trying to add on to what I learned, to add a bit of my own stuff onto it so that I knew I really understood it and how it works and how I could alter it and adapt it. And as I kept going, it just became bigger and bigger, and I eventually ran into this cat-like coding tutorial of the hex maps, and it was just a brilliant tutorial. And I was about halfway through it when I just thought I'm going to skim to the end and just see what it covers. And when I did that, I realized that this is the missing piece. I've always struggled with getting the graphics just on the screen, actually, in the old days. And now it was really possible to make something look reasonable in a short amount of time. And I just kept going and kept adding on to it. And as it grew, I realized that it could actually become a viable game. That's how it started. So it's really my first ever game that I'm working on. But I do have about 15, almost 20 years experience in coding, which some technical coding in financial credit risk management. So my career was in credit risk management, and I had to implement a lot of statistical methodologies and so on in that time. Also worked with Visual Basic for some programs, and mostly data handling, data manipulation, and statistical modeling on the data.
Right. And sorry about that, I have like a fly buzzing around me. It's probably going to keep bugging me as we keep playing. So, you definitely got into game dev, I think, a lot later than a lot of people that I usually talk to. I've spoken to a lot of like first timers and students who got into the scene. I guess, what attracted you to start trying to do game dev now?
Well, I was always interested in it, and in many of the aspects that come into play. I've always designed stuff in SketchUp, for example, and tried to plan stuff that I was building in SketchUp to see if everything would work. I designed a simple little board game through the years that I cut out of uh, carton and build. So I've always done things that you generally find in game development, and I've always played games as well, board games, computer games. I'm not the biggest gamer, but I've always played a bit, and it's always been fascinating to think about how stuff happens behind the scenes and how you would make the thing that you see now in this game actually happen. So it was just something I've always been interested in, and kind of like a dream that, yes, many people think I would one day want to build a game, but it wasn't really a practical dream until 3 years ago, when it started really becoming a reality or a possibility. And as I took on this hobby, I kept spending more and more time on it, and interest in the game grew more and more. And eventually, after 2 years about, I decided I'm going to put my real career on hold now for a year. I've saved up some money. I'm going to stop. At that time, I had my own one-man consultancy doing projects at various clients, and it was going really well. So I'd saved up a bit of money, and I thought I'm going to buy my time for a year with my savings, and see if I can push this as far as I can to see where I can where I can take it. If it doesn't go well, then yes, I've wasted some opportunity and some money, but it's also a waste of an opportunity if you never try something like this and you get to the end of your life and you think back, maybe I've got enough money, but I haven't got any time now anymore. So I just decided to go for it, give it a year, and just give it all, and see if it can fly.
All right. And for people watching us live record right now, what is kind of the elevator pitch for World Turtles?
It is a colony builder, but it's got some alternative mechanics, if I can call it that. You your colony is situated on top of a turtle that floats through space, and the space and the turtle actually is part of the game. So it's not just a gimmick that you look at for 2 minutes and it's over. You Some of your goals would be, for example, to steer the turtle around in space to get to certain climates that you need, or away from other climates that would harm, let's say, your meeps or your food production and so on. So there's elements in space that have an impact on your world as your turtle flies through them, and you can steer the turtle eventually through space to hit or miss some of those areas in space. You'll also have to feed your turtle to keep it alive. So you do research and build a huge catapult, but you're not using it to go to war. You're using it to actually keep yourself alive through keeping the turtle alive. So also there are AI players, but in most games you're against the AI players, but yeah, you'll be with the AI players. So you kind of have to be their big brother and trade with them and interact with them in a way that also makes them stronger, so that in the end they can help you with the huge projects that you need to accomplish, like getting the huge catapult and feeding the turtle, or exploration into space and so on. So it's about almost playing for them as well, seeing what they need, and playing the game so that you can make you and them stronger, so that you can accomplish the bigger feats that you need to do in the end.
All right. And I was looking on the store page, and one of the things I thought was very interesting is with this being your first game, you went with this kind of like city builder, colony builder, that kind of design, because it's oftentimes one of the more complicated and challenging games to do. What kind of attracted you to this concept to make your first game on?
Well, I always liked this kind of building up game a lot more than, for example, I don't like first person shooters. I can understand that people like them, but I can't play them for very long. It just doesn't attract me. So I wanted to build something that I myself would be positive about or would like to play. And also I had some ideas. Um, Probably about 10 years ago now, I just built a little Excel-based, no graphics, just buttons and logic, little game in that I just kind of played myself. It was based on Discworld, which some viewers may probably have already guessed, is a big influence on World Turtles. But I couldn't use those ideas or those that little game that I just built for myself as it was because I'm not allowed to really use Discworld specific characters and ideas and locations in this game. The myth of the world turtle is of course fair game because it's been around for ages in many different cultures from India, China, South America. There's a lot of world turtle myths, and that's where Terry Pratchett got the idea from as well. He borrowed the world on four elephants on a turtle from the Hindu mythology. So that is fair game to use that. And I had already had some of these ideas, so I just generalized them so that they're not this world specific anymore. And as I kept learning about Unity, I just thought I'll focus everything on this main idea and focus the stuff that I choose to learn on according to what I needed to implement some of these ideas that I already had in my mind. And that's just how it kept growing until it became something that you could actually play.
Mm-hmm. And I guess like for me, I've always enjoy like city builders, colony sims, those kinds of games. I mean, I grew up playing the Impressions era with Pharaoh, Caesar, and so on. And it is a very interesting genre, and it's one that I always want to see like different and new takes on because it definitely has, I think, declined a lot. And I would say over like the last 10 years or so. Wouldn't you say?
I actually haven't played a lot of games the last 10 years or so. If I had to pick games that I've played, it's probably StarCraft 2 and Civilization up to 6, and that's about it for the for the last 10 or 15 years. So in this journey of mine, many people tell me, "Oh, it's like that, and it's like this game, and it's like that mechanic," and I have no idea what they're talking about most of the time. So I'm probably doing it a lot different than what you'd expect, how you expect it to be done, which is on the one side good and on the other side not so good because people expect to play a game in a certain way and it can be a bit difficult to get used to a different way of doing it. But I mean that's all I have. um, I have learned a bit about the games as I went on, but I don't have that much experience in the games of the last 10-15 years. So I'm just trying to put something of myself out there, and hopefully there's enough people who enjoy it.
Yeah, and that actually takes me to a question for you. In terms of, I guess, as you just said, you don't play a lot of like current games, so you're not quite familiar with the mark as is today. I guess in terms of you actually like learning game design, I guess how did you like start? Like once you decide that you wanted to make a game now, I guess did you do any research? Did you look at any books? Like how did you kind of like prepare yourself for making or starting to make World Turtles?
Um, no, I don't. I didn't actually formally tried to kind of search for ways I should be thinking. I have played games my whole life. I've I've played some board games, and I have an idea of how mechanics should work and how they should interact with each other and balance and so on. So up to now, I've been going on that, just trying to make sure that um, something that you build into the game fits into something else and not stand on its own, so that there's some interaction, some complexity added, some different ways of doing things that impacts different parts of the game, so that you don't have just linear kind of paths that you go through. And other than that, it's not that complicated, the game itself. It's resource gathering. I've tried to put in a bit of like chains of turning certain resources into new resources that you use to upgrade and improve and so on. And that's a basic staple of the genre. And I sometimes I would have an idea and maybe discuss it with some of the people that are also interested in the game, and get some different options or proposals that you could try to link into the game. But as the game grows, it actually becomes almost easier to figure out what version of an idea you need to put into the game. It's almost like there's a hole in the game already, and if you turn this new idea in a certain way, it fits into that hole. As long as I think the big thing is you need to keep in your mind anything new that you want to add, how it's going to affect what's already there. How can it add value to making this whole thing a bit more interacting with each other, and almost like add to the complexity. Because if you've got different systems, and the more touch points they have, the more the choices of the player actually mean something or changes the way you progress through the game. And yeah, it's just been what I've learned through my life through playing and thinking about the games that I like.
All right.
Maybe I'll have to do some research later on if I the more I progress and the more extra systems I need to put in. But up until now, it has not really been that hard to kind of figure out where I want to go next.
All right. And as you were saying at the start, that you originally started World Turtles as kind of like taking a year off to kind of attempt game dev. How long have you actually been working on World Turtles now for?
Yeah, I've been working on it for as a hobby for about 2 years before I took the year off. So
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't propose just taking a year off from the start, without seeing if at least there's something in it. And by that time, I mean, I've built up a few thousand wish lists. I've gotten some feedback. I even won some small awards at small competitions and so on. So I felt that there is something in it. If I really work on this and I build something of quality, then there's a good possibility that a probability that there'll be enough people interested in it. And so it was 2 years, about December last year, and then I started working on it full time now for what's it now, 7-8 months. And yeah, it was like it came in steps. So at first I just spent a bit of time in it, and later on I actually reduced my actual real time work or real life work, adult work, and I started spending more time on this until eventually I just didn't take on any new projects, and I thought I'd just focus on this for a year and see where I can get it.
And it's good that you did a lot of, I guess, like pre-production and pre-planning before you kind of went full-time into it. Because I've seen a lot of developers will chase an idea without really knowing if there's an interest in it. And it can be incredibly tough, I think, for a lot of developers, especially for your first idea, to know, is this something that I just like, or is there a market for it?
Yes, and also, I mean, the whole industry. I haven't done anything in this industry before, so I don't know how it works, what it will take, what are the steps to even release a game, localization, how much is involved in that. All these things are totally new to me, so I try to learn as much as I can as I went through this process of building up the game to a point where I thought there's probably something in this, and I have a reasonable chance of giving it a go full time. I've tried to learn from everybody that wanted to set up meetings with me or discuss possibilities with me. So I took on all these meetings, and I asked people questions and learned how the industry works and what does publishers do, and uh, all the functions in the industry. So I just tried to educate myself while I was learning, so that at least I have an idea of what to expect and what is required from me, and what is something that I can get help from someone else. And as I learned all of this, the picture became clearer, and the possibility became more kind of uh, concrete for me.
Mm-hmm. And I actually want to go back to something that you said a few minutes ago for like people who like tuned in late or maybe missed it. You were talking about how one of your bigger struggles was with the art and being able to generate art and assets like that. And I was wondering if you give a little bit more detail about what changed or like what program kind of helped you in that respect.
It was basically the fact that there was so many assets that you could either try for free just to see if your prototype would work, and then just also quality assets that you could buy for not that much. Sure, $50 isn't something you give out every day, but if you find an asset that has a bunch of items that you can use in your game, and you pay $50 for it, in terms of how much it would cost me to make the same thing, it's just crazy. It's a bargain. If it fits into your game and you can make it work with a few other assets and a few other from a few other places, and still make it look reasonably coherent, and that if they just go together, then I mean I'll never be able to make all of that on my own. So that made it possible for me to put enough assets from different places together into one whole. Some of it I was able to do in Photoshop or a little bit of Blender, and I've had a little bit of help as well, and just adjusting some of the assets for me to fit in better. But if I had to do all of that by myself, I could just about forget about it. And I don't have permanent help in any of this, but I do find people to help me out from time to time with a few hours here or a few items there, where I can't do it myself, or it would just take too much time to do it myself.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the actual team working on World Turtles, is it just yourself or do you have other people helping you?
Full time, or relatively full time, it's just myself. I have someone helping me with the sound. We're using a software called Wise that you set up everything in, and then you pull it into Unity and refer to all the sound that you want to play through Unity. So he's actually a professional sound, what do you call it, sound guy in film. So he's got lots of experience in film, but he saw the game one day and he offered to help me on it. And it's been great because I was already doing a bit of sound, but it would not have been as good as it is now. We have attenuation, so you can hear the sound coming from different angles. It goes softer as you go further away, and so on. So it's just such an important part of the immersion of the experience. If the sound actually makes sense, realistic sense, as what you expect to hear, instead of just being the same exact thump every time you hit a tree. We've got some variation built in, so sometimes it's a bit deeper or higher or lots longer or softer, or so all of those little extras that you build into the sound makes a huge difference to the whole experience. And then I've got a young guy helping me with some Blender adjustments from time to time. So I need a small thing on one of the buildings changed, or I need building blocks of an asset to be switched around a little bit, and so I ask him from time to time to help me on that. And then I've got someone helping me with the 2D icons. So the ones that I can't make through screenshots, I from time to time I ask him to make a few of them for me. Especially on the research side, there's a lot of what do you call it, idea or other things that you research that is not a physical item in the game. So I can't make a screenshot of that. I have to get someone to draw it for me.
Nice.
Then I've commissioned a title track, but all of the other music is just from Commercial Commons 0. I've managed to track down a few really good artists, and I'm using the music as the game's music, free of charge. Luckily, there are many people with great talents that make their work available for people to use, and you can join their Patreons or give them some money in some way to also make it worth their while.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing I just wanted to ask you about, I saw on the store page that you are based out of South Africa. And one thing I always like to ask developers when we have like international guests is, what is kind of like the general like game dev space in South Africa like? Is there a game dev space?
Nothing that I'm aware of or personally involved in. I know there's a Africa Games event that happens every year, and I know that there are some famous game developers based out of South Africa, but I don't know any of them, and I've never been really involved in anything here. So, yeah, it's not like there's a culture or a group of people here that I fit into that share the same kind of ideals or the same struggles or the same marketing efforts and so on. But I mean, I can find that internationally online.
All right. And with, I guess, going back to World Turtles, one of the things that I know, so as I was playing, I know this is something that you brought up and I saw you did an update about, was about the tutorial and onboarding. And this is something that for a lot of developers, even those who have, veteran stats or very experienced, tend to struggle with. And I just want to get your thoughts on how you adjusted the onboarding and kind of like, how did you approach teaching someone how to play this game?
Yeah, the UI has actually been one of the very last things that I started improving. So I always had my little ugly placeholders in there and a bunch of hotkeys that I needed to press to make stuff work as I tested it. But lately I've tried to increase the smoothness with which the UI runs and how visible it is in the game. And I still can't put a real nice theme into it, so I'm just using black background with very simple frames around it. I wish I could one day make it just look proper, but if I tried something like that on my own, it would just look very bad. So I'm just keeping to the simple black with the simple frames for now. Maybe one day that can get updated if it works out that I can have someone working on it with me for that reason. But yes, my demo has been out for, it's probably 17 months now. So from very early on, I put a demo out, and there were people that's been passionate about the game or very positive about it and giving me feedback and telling me this doesn't work or they have no idea what to do here. So I change certain things from time to time. And then also, whenever it occurs that somebody actually plays the game live on Twitch or YouTube or whatever, I try to join if I can, even if it's a small a small streamer. I always try to join and answer questions and just see how they play the game. So if I see something that everybody is struggling with, I need to find a way to make it happen in a different way. So I think in the last few months, the UI has really improved a lot, both in terms of how intuitive it is to play and also just how smooth it runs and how nice it feels to move over the icons and click the icons and just that little feedback that you get when you play the game. And of course, I'm not an expert at all, and it's the first time I'm making UI, so it's definitely kind of like a bad apple in the whole all of the factors that goes into the game. I'm aware of that. I'm trying to improve it, and it's come a long way, but there's still a lot to do. In terms of the tutorial, there's the two things of how much do you actually need to hold the hand of the player. If you add in too much and you try to explain every single thing with a sentence or two, then you're going to lose the player quite easily. So you kind of need to decide which are the important bits that you need to show the player and which are the bits that they'll figure out themselves while they're doing the important bits. So maybe while they're doing a big task, there's a little icon that pops up and they will intuitively go to it, read the tooltip, or click on it, or make a selection, and you don't have to tell them every single thing that they need to do. And I think it's a balance between those two things. What do you need to tell the player, and what can they actually just figure out on their own without getting stuck on it? And watching people play kind of gives you that a bit of an idea of where do you need to step in and where can you step back.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the more interesting challenges in being able to watch people is seeing how they struggle or deal with the UI itself in terms of, button presses, mouse clicking, and that kind of thing. And I think that's one of those big areas when it comes to onboarding and UI UX design that a lot of developers really need to pay attention to. Is that, yes, somebody can figure things out just by clicking randomly, but if they're clicking randomly around your UI, it means they're not really understanding, okay, what am I looking at? And I've seen a lot of games from first-time developers tend to struggle with that kind of sense, where it's just, I load it up, I look at the screen, there's dozens of buttons and icons flashing at me, I'm just sitting there going, what am I looking at besides just a bunch of blinking lights?
Yes, I actually updated the demo, what's it now, though, about 4 or 5 days ago, and I made a completely new tutorial that you can apply on any random map. So you start a random map, and depending on what you find on that map, what hand you're dealt with, the tutorial adapts itself to it. So it looks for a correct place to give you a certain message instead of having a fixed place where you need to construct a woodcutter's cabin, for example. And it also hides a lot of the UI for the time being. So when you start up, you don't have 9 hints. You only have 3. You don't see the wild crops and its UI yet. You see the crops there, but you can't click on any of it. And as you progress through the objectives that you need to complete, it reveals these bit by bit, so that you only see 2 or 3 new things at a time. And once you have completed that objective, you're ready to see a few more new things. So the game throws it at you and then asks you to do something with it. And I think that's a much better approach than what I had before, of having everything there and then asking you to do, even then asking someone to do a certain thing with 5 things surrounding that one thing. It's still a challenge. And I think it's now a lot better where you actually can go through it step by step. It doesn't force you to place something at a specific place, but it says place it next to building, next to, let's say, trees, and it indicates a possible building placement, but it doesn't force you to place it at an exact little spot. And also, I wanted to mention another thing. Oh, you also can actually make decisions. So it asks you, do you want to focus on resource gathering or exploration first? And depending on your choice, it takes you down a certain path first before coming back to the other one. So it also almost feels a bit like you're a bit in charge. So whatever you are most positive about, you can pick first, and you can go onto that path. And it's almost like you are telling the tutorial what to do instead of the tutorial telling you what to do.
And that I think is very interesting about having the tutorial be dynamic along those lines. That's not something we often see from not just like traditional games, but any kind of simulation, city building, that kind of design. And I think that is a really good way to go, because oftentimes what hurts these games from a UX perspective is that you're kind of just telling the player exactly, okay, you must do this, this, this in this order, and there's no real like input. There's no sense of why am I doing this. By making it more dynamic, I think that does give the players, you said, it gives them a little bit more freedom to decide, okay, what do I want to focus on, and how does all this work?
Yeah, hopefully it also keeps you a bit more positive about the tutorial, and not you don't see it as a list of tasks that you need to do that you're not necessarily um, want to do, but it's something you chose, and I'm now going to help you to complete that part that you chose to do next. So it gives you a bit of a say in the whole tutorial.
Now, with like setting up to be dynamic, I'm just curious from like a programming perspective, how hard was that to like figure out or implement to make that tutorial dynamic?
At that point, when I made the tutorial, it wasn't actually that hard because I've already coded um, many of the things that I need. So if you start on a random map, I've got AI players, and they start at random starting locations, and they need to know where to place a woodcutter's cabin or a fisherman's hut. So I already had those search algorithms in place to tell the player or any AI player where would be a good spot for a woodcutter's cabin. And even the player himself, if you hover over the icon for placing a woodcutter's cabin, it will propose a location for you that is a good location. You don't have to use it, but it tells you, oh, I think this is a good location for a woodcutter's cabin. So those searches that already existed, so I just use them in the tutorial to find locations. So if I tell you you need to now construct this and this, I find locations for them, indicate that those are proper locations. But again, you don't have to follow them. As long as you build the two buildings that I've asked you in your own proper locations, the tutorial can continue. There was something else I thought about. No, it's gone now. Maybe I'll think about it again.
That's all right. And I think going to the actual game itself, we haven't really touched on that. I do want to spend a few minutes discussing kind of like the gameplay loop and what you're doing in it. As a bit of a time check, we are about 40 minutes into the actual stream. So I know it feels like we just got started.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk a little bit about that. For anyone watching, if you have any questions for Gideon about World Turtles and development, feel free to put them in the chat and I'll get to them if they show up. But in terms of the general loop, we've discussed a little bit about the game over the last 40 minutes, but for people watching us, either live or recorded right now, what is kind of like the general play of World Turtles like?
Okay, so it starts off like most of these games with gathering resources. So and I guess exploration. So you've got almost like two streams. One is to find out more about the environment. The other one is to harvest the resources of the environment. Okay, so on the one side, you'll have your wanderer that walks around and learns about all the stuff that you find on the map. and on the other hand, you have your woodcutter, your stonemason that gathers these resources. Even your farmer, then you need to find a big location for your farm because it's a huge building. And these two things kind of interplay. So you need the one side to do the other side, but you need the other side to support the first side as well. And the other building that you get at the start is the builder's yard, and that is how you handle your expansion. So if you, I don't know, the people who've played Settlers 2, you had these guard houses that you kept pushing out your boundaries with. So you build these guard houses to expand your territory. In World Turtles, it's actually the builder's yard, because wherever you want to build, you need a builder close enough so that they actually can construct the buildings and later do the upgrades and construct the extra buildings outbuildings that come with them. So you expand your territory by constructing builders yards, and around these builders yards is where you can actually construct the other buildings. So then you go through the resource gathering, then you get to research hubs and leisure hubs. So all of your meeps all of the building types has their own mini research tree. So your builders would work on a certain set of technologies. Your wanderers would work on a certain set of technologies that has to do with their work. Your farmers will work on a certain set of technology. So you don't select one technology to work on at a time, like you get in a lot of games. You select a technology for every building. And then some of these technologies feed into other buildings as well. So you need something at the farm to unlock something at the builder's yard, for example, depending on how these things feed logically into each other. And you also need experience for each of the buildings, or the meeps inside the building. So as you perform these tasks, each of them has got 2 tasks plus research and leisure. And you need to do enough of all 4 of these tasks for that meep or that building's meep to that allows you to upgrade them. So they need to be experienced enough in all 4 the tasks, and that allows them to upgrade, as well as a research item that you need to get, and as well as upgraded tools that you need to get for them. So after you've done the resource gathering and the research and the leisure, you actually need metals. So you bring in your alchemist and your tinkerer, and they create the metals and the tools that you need for upgrading. So all of these buildings have an interaction with each other, and you need to select how much time each building spends on each of these tasks. So if you do too much wood cutting, chopping down trees, then the trees will run out. So you need to set some of your woodcutters to also plant trees again. But if you have to focus too much on getting wood in, then your research will suffer, and you'll get to those research items slower. So at different times in the game, you need to set the priorities of these meeps to different tasks to get to your immediate and your long-term goals. Maybe you want to do something faster, so you set the priority temporarily to higher. And so at the moment, it goes up to the metals, and you can upgrade each building type twice. So first you get iron, and then you get alloys, and each of these steps then lets you progress your other buildings another step, and that makes them more efficient, and they eventually get other building types that they can commission as you upgrade them and as you research these new building types. And then I want to get to I've expanded a bit on the research, but the leisure at this moment is just they walk to a leisure hub and they spend some time there and they get back. But I want to bring in something like art or objects that they actually make in their leisure time. So you'll have people spending some time on the arts when they're not just sitting around and talking to each other, but they will actually do something for your culture and for your appeal and so on in that leisure time. So I still need to develop that part into it, so that it's not just you don't see it as just wasting time, but it actually adds something to your realm as they take time off from work to spend on something more, making life more rewarding for themselves.
And
then,
oh, go ahead.
Then I want to expand on that. So that's where I'm at the moment, but I want to go to higher tiers where you kind of go into services instead of products, instead of just harvesting resources, but going to a second and a third tier where you actually have services, and then get to like bigger projects that has to do with space and the turtle and the whole world, impacts the whole world for all the players combined. So I'm leading up to those big events, or those big tasks and achievements that you need to get everyone working together for. That's still a lot of development to go.
And just to clarify, as you said earlier, this is meant to be like very more on the wholesome side, that kind of thing. Is there any combat in World Turtles?
I don't plan on having any combat. I do realize that there needs to be some risk. There needs to be something that you need to avoid or prepare against. I initially thought that trying to build a combat system on top of everything else that I need to learn as my first game it would probably kill me. I think a combat system is quite an important part of a game. If that doesn't work well, then it kind of kills a lot of the game. So I wasn't prepared to say I'm going to take that on as well at the moment. There's so much else that I need to get in place and learn and get some experience in, that I thought I'm going to try some alternative ways of keeping the player engaged and not develop a combat system. So that's why I'm moving away from the fighting and the conquering into a more teamwork and working with the AI and having joint goals, big projects that you need to complete as a world instead of only as a realm.
And that actually takes me to the next question. So I saw on the page that there's stuff about being able to like interact with other world turtles and kind of, as you said, like go from being like the small, just working on like a single city, to being a faction, to being the entire, organizing everything on the turtle. Is that layer kind of like that macro layer of interacting with other turtles in the game yet? And if so, like how does that work, or what are you planning for it?
No, not yet with other turtles. Again, I have no experience with multiplayer or coding. Of course, it would be great if you could have your turtle and some other player's turtle is nearby, and you can have some interactions with them or some cooperations with them. It would be, I would dearly like to get there eventually. But at the moment, it's just the one turtle, and it's just about surviving on that turtle and getting to feed the turtle, and then. But I haven't implemented yet. But I have some plans of almost like expeditions or projects that you have to go into space for. So at least doing some stuff around the turtle in space is planned, but it's not yet implemented. I do. For example, helicopter already in the game that already works. The player can't control it yet, but it gets built and a meep gets onto it and it flies around randomly into different locations. So I've already started implementing the tools that I need to do this, but the player cannot yet interact with outside space except for steering the turtle into different parts of space.
And yeah, multiplayer is certainly its own Pandora's box for a lot of developers. Let's see. A few questions came in. Let's see. Alexander, sorry if I butchered that, asked, how did you organize yourself during the development? You said you took 2 years first as hobby. Did you already have gone through the vertical slice during those 2 years?
I wasn't as organized as I probably should have been. I knew I had a list of many things that I needed to work on, and every every day that I sat down, I just picked something that I knew was going to be in the final game, and I just worked on it. I think I was lucky in that I had the idea fairly clear in my head of what this will eventually be. So there wasn't a lot of spending time on something, wondering if it's going to turn out to be useful. Most of the work that I've done is in the game. Very little of the time spent on doing something was canned later. Um, so I had basically a list, just a little notepad list of things that I needed to do still, and I've still got it, and I've got my known bugs on there, and I just keep ticking stuff on, and I think ticking stuff off and placing stuff on it even faster. But I didn't really work in an organized manner. It's not. I think it's not my personality as well. I do sometimes like to be like a perfectionist, but I also just kind of hate routine. So I would just decide one day I'm going to work on this now, and the other day I'm going to work on that now. But I do have that big picture view in my head of what is important eventually in the big picture and what is stuff that I do need to do. It doesn't really matter that much when I do it, but as long as I keep working on something that adds value, eventually it all comes together. Yeah, so, and it's, I mean, I've been working from home since before it was cool. So my 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 one man consultancy was mostly working from home. I probably went in once, maybe twice a week to clients. So I was used to doing my work at home, and now I also just have that kind of the freedom of time. I've got 4 kids and a wife, so there's a lot of things that has to happen now or then, or that you can't really get around with. And with the game development, I actually have the time to say, okay, I've got 3 hours that I can't work now this morning, so I'm going to spend those 3 hours on wherever it's needed, and then tonight I'm going to catch up on it. I'm not working with a team, so I can work whenever I have the time to work. On the one side, it's good. On the one side, it's bad. But luckily, I still enjoy enjoy working on the game a lot. So I do find enough time to actually spend on it and keep adding value to it. But yes, not. I haven't got to wake up at 8 or 6 or 7 and
Yep.
do this at that time and do this at that time. I haven't got something like that. I just whenever I have time to work on this, I sit and I decide I'm going to do this now, and I'm going to work on that now, and I'm going to try this now. So it's almost like a free play that you just do whenever you get, but you have to keep your eye on that big picture as well to make sure that you don't stray from at least doing something valuable.
Yep, and it is important, as you said earlier, like this is your dream idea. Like this is the idea that you want to make. You want to see this game being made. Because another trap that you can easily fall into is getting stuck making something you don't like, or you've just gotten completely sick and tired of the project, and it becomes just this like a toll that you must keep doing every single day, no matter what.
Yes, I don't know if I'll get there eventually. I haven't yet. Hopefully, I can keep going for another year or so without starting to feel that. I felt that in my grown-up job, especially in the last 2 or 3 years, where I wasn't motivated anymore for it, and it shows. I mean, if someone does a job that they're not really into, of course, the quality is going to lack, the commitment is going to lack, and I didn't like where I was going with that. So I kind of gradually moved from the one to the other and made sure that I did enough work to make this new possibility an actual possibility, and gradually moved off from the old possibility. Luckily, I've been working for years, so I've built up some savings, and I was able to say, let's go for it. And my wife supports me to a degree, not not as in take 3 years and do whatever you like, but let's take a year and see where it goes and see if it leads to anything. If I don't make as much money as I made in my professional career, I'm fine with that. As long as I make enough to still make it worthwhile. To me, money isn't everything. Time is probably more important, and while I have the luxury of buying out my time, I think it's something that I would have regretted for the rest of my life if I didn't take this chance, because you don't get something like this very often in life.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's kind of what I do with Game Wisdom, that I focus on making something that I want to do, and, I'm fine not making millions and billions of dollars. As long as I can keep the lights on and keep doing what I love, it's a win-win for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see, Avery was talking about, having separate turtles for managing trade routes would be pretty fun, but they weren't a fan of the instant achievements when playing the demo. They felt that, like, for completionists, it was almost like a trap. I guess, like, instantly get all the achievements or get, like, a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, the achievements was basically just me trying out to see how they work. So I put in a few achievements to see how does the system work and how would I eventually put achievements into the main game. I do have some ideas about proper achievements for the main game. I'm currently working on saving certain stats throughout the game to make those achievements possible. So to build up some more complex achievements and just build a building, upgrade a building, but to make it also kind of dependent over time. So you have to play a whole map and plan for an achievement, and the game is actually able to record the information that it needs across the whole map, that makes it granting you the achievement possible. So yes, the achievements that is there is just me trying out how it works and to see that I can actually add achievements and to show players that I will actually add achievements, but it's not going to be that simple eventually.
All right. One other question that I had for you, with regards to, like, long-term play of World Turtles, are there fail states in this game? Like, is there a condition set that you can actually lose the map?
There will be, but there's not at the moment. So the only way you can really lose the map is if you don't build as your woodcutter's cabin and you use up all your wood. Then fine, you're done. Um, Originally, there was a way to use up all your meeps, and then you don't have any more meeps to build farms or to work on the farms anymore, and that would be a failed state. But since the meeps now have children, you actually just have to wait for your children to grow up before you can again build a building that gives you food that allows you to grow your population again. So yes, at the moment there are no fail states except you doing something really stupid. That totally means that you can't go ahead anymore for something like not having wood when you have to construct buildings. But I do realize that the game needs that to kind of give you some risk, something that you need to play against. Even if it's a setting that you can switch off if you just want a little sandbox that you can play in. But for the main game, there will be stuff like that. One of them will be, for example, the turtle dying if you don't feed it in time, so enough or soon enough. So that will be one of the states where everything just goes downhill if you don't care for the environment and for the turtle well enough. And I've got some other ideas, but at the moment it's not yet implemented in the game. So at the moment it's still almost like just putting all the buildings and the mechanics there for the player to experience without them necessarily being limited. Yet you'll also see that if you play the demo, you've got loads of resources, but the game will eventually be harder. It will require you to make some tough decisions about what you're going to spend your money on. For now, I've decided to just keep the demo just easy to play, and so that you can actually figure out how stuff works instead of figuring out exactly what you need to do when for not losing.
All right. One question that I wanted to ask you, as a new developer, or as someone who's starting out now in terms of game dev, and you're also making the game, obviously through, it's going to be on early access. So, as a point of clarification for people watching, World Turtles, when we're recording this, is not officially out. The demo is available, and you are planning, I believe, on the store page, early access for September. And what I wanted to ask you about, with regards to doing early access, how are you approaching, I guess, the development pipeline for the game once it goes into early access? Like, how frequently are you thinking about updating it? What's kind of like your schedule once the game is, I guess, quote unquote, out?
Okay. I think I would continue updating it as I have updated up to now, which is probably at least once a month. The main reason for going into early access in September is the fact that I will then have used up a year that I gave myself to work on this without any income. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Personally, I would like to make the game more complete before I sell it, and maybe something like that is still possible if someone else comes online with me. Maybe I get a publisher that is willing to help me out with parts of the game and working on it and completing it a lot further before we actually go into early access. Personally, I would like to make the game more complete, but in order for me on my own to do that, I would need to get some income out of it at some time. I can't spend 4 years without income and then release the game. Unfortunately, I wouldn't actually like doing it that much, because then I'm asking people to give me their money while I know there's still a lot of work to be done on the game. It feels slightly less optimal to me, but if I have no other option, then that's what I need to do. But there is a possibility that a publisher will go into a partnership with me, and if that happens, then the plan, of course, is it's possible to say, okay, I'm not going to go into early access in September. I'm going to keep working on it for another 6 or 9 months, the whole cycle, and then I'll be able to put out a game of much better quality and only then ask you for your money. Which, on the one side, I would really prefer. On the other side, people has been waiting for the game, and I would like them to play it as soon as they can. But also, I would really like the game to be a quality game. And on the other side, the other factor in that is also that I get one chance to release this game. Even early access is basically your release. If things go sour on your early access release, you don't really have a chance to make it up. And if I have hopes of doing this long term, then this game cannot fail. I've been working on it for 2.5 years now, and if this fails, then I don't have another year or two to invest in something that may work out. So I would like the game to be better quality before I sell it, so that everybody's experience of the game is better, and it just has a better chance of actually giving me a long-term career in game development. So if I could, that's what I would do. Maybe I can. I've had offers in the past, one offer at least, which I didn't take because the deal was just not good enough. But I've also people keep contacting me, and I've had meetings with certain publishers, and I have to sometimes decide if it's worth continuing with the talks and so on. But nothing has yet been signed, so it all depends on what happens before September. If I don't get someone with me on the journey before September, then I'll have to release. If not, then I can keep updating the demo from time to time and eventually release a much better game. Even still early access.
And it is a very tough line to walk as an independent developer. Because as you said, and something that I've said many times over, that early access is very much a release of your game. It's just not the release of your game at 1.0. And knowing when to put it on, like when you have the freedom to say, okay, I can work on this for 2 more years and then put on to early access, or I can push us back. It's very hard. I know for the amount of work that you've put into the game so far, about knowing when is this game, I guess, consumer friendly. Because if that, especially for a colony sim or more abstracted based design, it's very hard to do. And as we were talking about earlier, that you've updated the UI, you've updated the tutorial. Like if you try to release the game in early access without that stuff in there, it would have, hurt its chances so much when a lot of people get frustrated by it. But there's always that, little voice in your head that says just keep holding on to the game. Keep, don't put on early access yet, don't show it to more people until it's perfect. But again, for a lot of developers, I'm sure you're aware of it, I'm sure it's for our indie devs in chat, that a lot of us don't have that luxury just to hold on to an idea for infinity time.
Yes. What I am very scared of, or what's the English? What's the word? I'm aware of people being very negative towards games that use early access kind of as an excuse for not being a good quality, even if it's not complete. The part that is there should be of a certain quality. And I definitely don't want to use early access as like an excuse for having a poor game. I would like the game to be good enough quality to release the parts that are included, and where it's incomplete, then sure, it's incomplete. But the parts that are complete and that you can have bug free and that you can have polished, I think should be polished. You shouldn't have all kinds of bugs and crashes and problems in the part that you are willing to release, and that's also why I don't feel the game has to be perfect before you release, but there's still a lot I feel I can add to the game before early access would be a better early access. And I mean that release determines the whole future of the game and my own future as a game developer. And so it's quite an important step. So it's not something to take lightly. And if I can do something to improve the product that I eventually put into early access, and it takes 6 months longer or whatever, then I think it's a good step to take, even though I guess certain players would be upset that the game doesn't release in September while I've had it on my website for a while. I still feel that it's probably better to delay the game and put out a much better game, because I would have to work on the game in any case to get it to a complete state. After if I am released in early access in September, I would still have to work on the game for 9 months more to get it to a complete game. So yeah, it's a bit of a seesaw. You don't know which side is best, but personally I feel if I had some more time and I could spend some more months working on it and just making it a more complete game, a more enjoyable game, then I would like to do that.
Yep.
But I would need someone else to see the potential in the game as well and come on the journey with me.
Let's see. Avery asks, have you considered the marketing showcase angle, or do you feel it's still too early days in that regard?
marketing showcase.
Yeah, I'm not
I'm not sure
sure.
what that means.
Yeah.
I am involved in events,
Mhm.
so Steam events and other events. I enter what I can. I try to show the game on Reddit and try not to spam too much, but get the word out and get people to cover me. Um, I've been doing that for a long time, so my demo's been out for 17 months, and I've always tried to
Mhm.
market in some way or another to get people to be aware of the game. But I'm not sure exactly what the question asks.
All right. We'll see if they will elaborate. Another question from Mr. Game in Chat asked, as an upcoming game dev, do you have any suggestions for, I guess, what programming language to start learning? I guess, what was the one that you focused on?
Well, I started with Unity and C Sharp because that's the tutorial that I saw.
Hmm.
If I saw a different game engine, I would probably have gone into that game engine. So I never really sat down and thought, oh, which game engines are available and which one would be better for me. I think Unity is fine. I think Unreal is fine. I think some of the smaller ones are fine if it does what you need it to do and if you know how to handle it. Um, it's almost like the exact bus that you're driving isn't as important as your skill as a bus driver. So whatever bus you take, just make sure that you know how that bus works, how you drive that bus, what you can do with that bus, what you can't do with that bus, and that it will take you to where you need to be. That's how I feel. I mean, I'm not nearly professional enough to be worried about the limitations of the game engine, the large game engines. I will never run into those limitations, so it doesn't bother me. I'm happy with Unity and C Sharp. I think I'd be just as happy with something else if that's what I worked in. Mostly, I guess not all of them are equal, but a lot of them would be able to do what I need them to do. So it's not really a big factor in my life.
All right. Let's see. Avery, clarify more about what do you show people to sell the game? Like, show people like the big selling point. I mean, as you say that you've been in showcases. Have you? I guess as a bit of a question, and as a new developer, have you done anything special in terms of marketing, or one second, excuse me, or in terms of I guess getting like trailer footage, reaching out to people, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I've done a lot of that from very early on. So I made the demo available quite early on. I mean, I'm a first time game developer, so why would anybody trust anything I say without seeing something, some results out of it? So that's why I made the demo available as soon as possible. It gave me some place to push people towards and to pivot all my marketing on. So I could tell people, go play the demo. I mean, it's free for you to try. If you don't like it, fine. Don't wish list it. If you like it, then please wish list it. You can see where I'm at. You can see how I progress. And it's open. It's out there. So what I would say is I wish I tried to be included in more festivals earlier on. I wasn't that aware. I was aware of the Steam Next Fest. And that's about it. I wasn't aware of all these other festivals that go on around them all throughout the year. So I never entered them until early this year, and I got into the Earth Appreciation Festival, which was over 2,000 wishlists in a few days, and then I had the Next Fest, which was again over 2,000 wishlists in a few days, and I'm currently in the Tiny Teams festival, which hopefully gets some front page exposure over the weekend, and would then again probably be over 2,000 wishlists in a few days. So getting into the correct festivals or events or whatever you want to call them is quite important. The ones with proper Steam coverage or just huge streamers playing the game and getting exposure. But there's also a lot of smaller ones that only give you very few wish lists. But in any case, getting involved in that and trying to figure out which ones are the ones you need to aim for and which ones are the ones your game is fit for, and so on. I wish I'd done that earlier, but at least I am doing it now, and it's been really a good, since April. It's been a good 4 months for me personally.
All right.
Before that, it was a lot of posts and grinding and grafting and just trying to get anybody to see my work, and it's a lot of effort for not as many wish lists if you compare it to what I gain now, but I do think it had a use in that those early guys, they may not have been that many, but they were positive and they were giving me feedback, and they were just living this with me, and that kept me going and kept me taking the next step and the next step and the next step until I felt that I could now really give this a go. And if it wasn't for those little small steps, even though they took a lot of time to get to, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I don't look back on that and say I shouldn't have done that. It was all incremental value that kept increasing and that got me where I am now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's always important to have those people starting out with you on your side. I mean, I'd like to thank everyone here who's been following me for years now and giving me feedback and advice. Let's see. I think with that...
At the start, it was actually more game developers than it was potential clients, and I got some hints and tips, and what about this, and have you tried that, and it was really a nice time to be able to have those people kind of pushing me on, hoping with me that this can become a success.
Mm-hmm. I think with that, we are approaching an hour and 20. I think we can begin to wrap things up. And for the chat, if you have any questions for Gideon, let's consider this to be the last call for them. So, obviously, we are discussing this before the game is actually being out in early access, so things can change. But I do kind of want to talk about what your plans are, what your hopeful plans are for the game in early access for people watching. So, I guess the first thing is, how long do you plan, hopefully, to be in early access for?
Again, it's the first time I'm going through this entire process, so I'm not all that aware of exactly what is required in each step of the journey. I would like to, if it goes into early access in September, then maybe spend another year to 18 months on it. Of course, it depends on the support that I get, the sales that I get, and how many people are actually interested in the game. I would personally love to spend another 18 months or so implementing some of the ideas, or most of the ideas that I've built up to now. But it really, there's so many factors that play a role that can change your plans. Yes, I'm not bringing it into early access because I think I'm almost done at the moment, in any case.
All right. And I guess this is the other one of those questions I'm sure is very too early to answer, but do you have any ideas, like, if, let's say, World Turtles does do well, and, you get help with it, and it does blow up, do you have any ideas for what your next game would be after that, or is that still way too far in the future?
I wouldn't like to spend too much time on that. I do have some ideas, and for example, I could maybe try to make a relatively small game, but try to learn about multiplayer, for example, because I've never done anything on multiplayer. So that could be an option to do, just to learn about stuff that I haven't learned before. I would like to make another game because there's so much of what I've learned in the last 2.5, 3 years that you can reapply to something else that would make progress a lot faster than your first game, because you've I've generalized a lot of the stuff so that I can use it in different situations. And if I now have to make another game, the threading, learning about threading and how to push stuff onto the thread and what to be aware of and careful with, that's done. I can make a game with threads now in no time because I have the threading system all set up. And many of the things that are in the game is things like this that can be transferred almost directly to another game. Stuff that happens behind the scenes. So I would dearly love to make something else later on in life, but for now, I think I should focus on making this as good as I can make it. Otherwise, there won't necessarily be the option of making a second game.
Okay. Here's one more, I think, final question about design I just want to ask you about, because this is something I'm sure a lot of developers who are watching this live recorded are curious about. In terms of, taking the feedback, again, as a first-time developer, you don't really have, the long-term experience of some of the other people we've spoken to on these shows, but as somebody who just got into game dev, do you have any advice for, when the flood of feedback comes in, whether it's good, bad, or somewhere in between?
To me, I think what's important is to stay realistic. There's a lot of people who can help you out in a lot of different ways, and it's important to take those lessons. There's also some people that may give you feedback or tips or advice that is not necessarily fit for your case. And I think it's important to try and distinguish the two, to know when it is something that you need to spend your time on and when it is something that is not necessarily as important. Because you could also be busy for the rest of your life on something that somebody else thinks is important. And it's not necessarily important. It could be done in a different way, or the opposite, or your idea is probably better than their idea. And I think it's an art to try and distinguish that from each other, especially if you don't have enough experience. But I'd say try to get good as soon as you can with doing that, because some things, some feedback would just waste your time, but there's also a lot of value in listening to the feedback, figuring out what parts of the feedback is useful and would make your game better. But yeah, also don't take it too personal. I mean, it's my first game I'm working on. Of course, I'm going to make mistakes. Of course, I'm going to implement that thing worse than RimWorld's developers. I've done it. I'm not. I shouldn't get personal about it or think that I'm now worthless because I didn't do it as well as whoever did it before. Try and make it better. Try to keep improving wherever you see trouble, wherever you see something, people complaining about how things work or not understanding how certain things work. Just try thinking of ways to improve it or change it or tweak it a little bit to just keep making the whole experience better, making the immersion of the game that people have when they play the game smoother.
Right. And here with the feedback, there's one other question I wanted to ask you, just because I spent so much time discussing UI UX. With regards to changing the demo, changing the UI, and the onboarding, what I wanted to ask you about is, as obviously the developer of the game, somebody who's well acquainted with the systems and the design, was there any particular aspect of playing the game that you felt was very easy to learn, very easy to grasp, that when you put in front of playtesters, they kind of had trouble with? And the reason why I ask this is that it's oftentimes a very big design trap of developers where they'll think that something is very easy because they're the one that designed it, but it's a lot harder for someone from the outside coming in to look at it.
Okay. One example I can use is that from the start and for quite a long time, I used the axis of the terrain themselves as my hotspot for the mouse clicking. So if you wanted to click on a building, you didn't click on the model of the building, you clicked on the ground that it was situated on. And it had become second nature to me. I didn't even think about it after a while. And people kept clicking on the building, and the building is not always, if you click on the building, it's not registering on the floor plan. And luckily, I've changed that, and it was actually not that hard. I just never did something like that, so I didn't know exactly how to do it. So I just never got around to it because I was getting along just fine. So there are things like that that you get so used to that it's not natural to other people, and especially it's definitely the better way to go is to click on the building. If you click on the models, then you open up the building. I just never needed it for myself, but I realized how important it is for other people, the real players, and then I probably spent about 2 or 3 days and it was in for buildings, for beeps, and so on. So it's actually something that I could have done and should have done a lot earlier, but it wasn't. It's almost like it's not something that is required for the game to work. You try and spend your time on the more important stuff, but the UI is actually, and the player's experience of the game is actually the important thing. And if he has trouble opening up a building's UI because he's clicking on the building instead of on the terrain, then he's going to shut down the game and look for something else. So there are definitely things that you don't deem important because you are so used to it, that you need to realize are actually very important, and that you need to get in place as soon as you can. And that's an example of it. Another thing is that in the beginning I was kind of becoming not depressed, but I spent some time making tooltips for everything and explaining stuff in the tooltips, but also a lot of players don't read them or don't read them completely. So they want to be able to click on something and just know what to do, or see from the UI, or have some intuition of how things click together. And you need to have the tooltips there, but you also need to try and make it so that the player don't actually have to read the tooltips if they are was like experienced enough in playing games that they will just naturally see what they need to do with the UI to get the mechanics of the game to work. And I think that's very difficult to know before, especially if you're used to the game. You know that you need to do that and that and that. Your brain is so used to it that you don't even think about it. But I think if you watch people play and just see what they struggle with and why they struggle with it, and even if you've put one thing in place that should help them out, if they're not using it, is there another thing that you can put in place that helps out the player that don't like to read the tooltip? Some players love reading the tooltips. They read every single sentence you put on there, and they just play the tutorial brilliantly, and they come out the other side and they knew exactly what they had to do. And then other people just don't want to read anything. They want to click on something and click on another thing, and it just has to work.
Yeah. I mean, I could spend the next hour or two talking more about UIUX. It's such a very challenging and fascinating topic. And as you said, it's easy to think that well, what's easy thinking my voice is going to survive, but it's easy to assume that people are going to click on all the tooltips, they'll watch tutorial videos and things like that. But at the end of the day, the information is not directly and readily available in the player's hands. They're not going to search for it. They don't want to look through 3-4 different UIs and Windows information to find something. They just want to click on it. What does this do? Okay, great, move on. And what you said about the tooltips, that is a very classic tip for a lot of developers, is that you want your tooltips to be very small. You want them to be bite-sized but informative. And if you can't do that, no one's going to read a tooltip that, opens up an entire paragraph on your window.
Uh, I've tried to get some of that long-winded information into the game by having um, like markers on the map with just a question mark and a heading. So let's say there's something about the water level, and then it's just a little question mark with water level on there. So almost like I'm here if you need me, but if you don't want to read me, it's fine. I'll just stay here in the corner until you maybe want to learn something about water levels, and then you can hover over me and I show you 3 sentences about how the water level works in the game, because it goes lower and higher as there's more or less rain, and that impacts even where your weeps can walk to. But if you're not ready to read that, I'm fine with that. I'll just stay here. And then these little tips, if once you click on them, they disappear, being that you've now read them and you know about it, so you can just let them go. But if you want to keep them there for later, you can also keep them there. So I've tried to do that where I don't force you to read something, but if you are interested in finding out a bit more of how a certain mechanic works, or what a certain thing on the map means, then there is a sentence or two there that can explain it to you. But yes, it's difficult to have. I mean, the phrase I've heard is that it doesn't have enough and it has too much.
Yep, sounds about right.
That's difficult to solve. It's difficult to take something away so that there's more.
Yep. All right. So I think with that, let's wrap things up for our discussion. We are just hitting 90 minutes in, and I think that is a good time. I guess to end things on, anything else regarding the design of World Turtles that we somehow didn't cover in our discussion that you would like to point out for people?
Not really that I can think of now. It's just maybe that the stuff you see in the game that feels like it doesn't add anything yet, there are plans with it. So you can, for example, build a helicopter, but you'll never be able to do anything with it. You'll just see the meat flying around with it. But that's not the final idea with it. I've built up to it, up to a certain level, but there is more that I am planning for it, for example. So it's not the final state. Not everything you see there has been um, uh, developed through the entire life cycle that I have planned for that mechanic or for that building or unit or whatever it is.
Oh, one more thing that I just remembered. I was looking at the images from the store page, and I noticed that there are a few that were like showing like kind of like a third-person perspective. Is that just zooming the camera in, or is there like an actual like walk around as a character feature?
No, it's just zooming in
Okay.
on the just focusing on the meep, and you can also actually do a flyby. There's also a button that lets you do a flyby around your realm. It's actually dynamic, so it picks points in your realm
Oh,
that are
nice.
important. So it won't fly into the unexplored terrain. It will fly only around the part that you have explored, and so you'll see what is really your realm instead of just blackness.
All right.
But yes, it's not actually going to interact with it.
Okay, so I think with that, I think that's the last question I have for you. So let's wrap things up for now. I guess for my final set of questions, and first off, in terms of social media, do you have any you like to plug, anything along those lines for people to follow you or World Turtles?
Yeah, I most important one for me in any case is the Discord server. I do have a subreddit as well. I've got Twitter, I've got Facebook, everything. All those links are actually in the demo. So if you're really interested in joining me on this journey, then you can pick one that suits you the best. I I do answer. I am active on all of them, but I spend most of the time on the Discord one, and that's also where most of the fans are, the followers are on Discord. And of course, wishlist and follow on Steam itself, and then you'll get all the updates as I post them on Steam.
All right.
I I do like getting people's feedback and hearing what they think about certain mechanics, and I so far I've been able to answer everything because there's not that many. We're heading to 500 members on Discord, so it's still manageable. So I like conversing with people that are active on the social medias. Personally, myself, so I don't have someone who manages that. I do it myself.
All right, and I'll include links to that in the show notes for the recorded version. Do you have anything you'd like to say to the fans or anyone watching to kind of like wrap up our cast on?
No, I'd just like to say thank you to anybody who does anything positive for the game, whether it be a wish list or a video or an interview or content creators. I'm just so happy that I have the chance of doing this and have people supporting me and being positive about the game and wanting to play it and giving me feedback and so on. I'm just glad there are enough people interested in this that I can keep working on it, and I hope I can make it a game that you are happy with one day.
All right, so I think with that, let's end things here for the cast. Gideon, it has been great chatting with you. I do wish you the best of luck with World Turtles and the early access release.
Thank you. It was nice having the interview and just talking about some of the ideas and the history and the future. The dream.
Yep, of course. So, for those of you watching this live or recorded, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check out World Turtles. Like I said, I have the link to the store page on the live version. For the record version, there should be links to social media as well and all that. And yep, hopefully if things go well for you again, I'll be happy to have you back on and talk more about kind of like the process and where things have gone with World Turtle later on.
Thank you.
So, for those of you watching, thank you again for tuning in. Do the liking, subscribing, and commenting. There are links to my socials and all that down there. There's up there on the overlay. Again, if you are a developer working on an upcoming game and like me to take a look at it or want to come on and discuss it, please reach out. Again, you can contact me through email, Twitter, Discord, whatever. So, I will be back later tonight for our regular streaming. Again, Gideon, best of luck with the game, and I'm sure everyone here will be happy to check it out when it comes out in early access.
Thank you very much.
So, with that said, everyone, come back for the discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where some of the art and science of games. Until our next chat, have a great night. Take care.